April 7, 1945, 2:15 in the afternoon. A field hospital outside the city center. Sophie's stomach was churning. The smell was terrible and awful. The odors of blood seeping from wooden floors, gangrene, and carbolic soap were truly nauseating. She had been working in this hospital for 3 years, but still couldn't get used to this smell. She walked past the wounded men. Wehrmacht soldiers evacuated from the collapsing Eastern Front. Some were sleeping, some were crying, some were groaning in pain. Some had already died, but no one had time to remove them. Such sad realities. Bed number 47. Heinrich Bauer lay with his eyes closed. His breathing wasn't good. The shrapnel wounds in his chest had become infected. The doctor said, maybe 2 days, maybe less. Nothing after that. Sophie sat down next to him. She held his hand. His hands were ice cold. "I'm here," she whispered. His eyes opened slightly, barely. "Sophie, don't talk. Save your strength." "There's something," he said, and coughed. Blood had clotted on his lips. "In my jacket, left pocket." Sophie reached for the gray Wehrmacht jacket hanging beside the bed. Her fingers touched the leather. She felt something hard. It was a book. She pulled it out. It was small, maybe 4 by 6 inches. The cover was worn, no title, just a diary. "What is this?" "The truth." His voice was barely audible. "Don't read it now." "Wait." He coughed again, more violently. "Heinrich, stop talking. Promise me." His hand gripped Sophie's tightly. "Don't read it until I'm gone." "You're not going anywhere." But they both knew she was lying. "Promise me." Sophie nodded. "I promise," she said, and his hand slowly relaxed. 3 hours later, Heinrich Friedrich Bauer died. He was 37 years old. He had survived 4 years of war, Stalingrad, Kursk, the retreat from Poland. But he never escaped from the truth he carried. Sophie kept her promise. She didn't open the diary until after she buried him. When she finally opened it, on the first page were 6 words written in Heinrich's careful handwriting. "I'm in love with 2 women." This is where the story begins. One man with 2 secret loves. Let's see what awaits us. Come, let's listen together. Margareta Richter was 26 years old when she met Heinrich in a university class in Berlin. January 1938. The lecture was about medieval German literature. She had asked a question about the Nibelungenlied. His answer lasted 7 minutes. After class, she waited outside the amphitheater. "That was either brilliant or completely wrong," she said. Heinrich smiled. "Which do you think it was?" "I haven't decided yet." They talked for 2 hours in a cafe that smelled of coffee and pipe smoke. He was 30 years old, a newly appointed history professor at Humboldt University. He wore round glasses that kept sliding down his nose. He spoke 4 languages but couldn't dance. Greta taught literature at a girls' high school. She lived with her family in Charlottenburg. She wore her hair in a practical bun. She read Goethe before bed. They were perfect for each other in the way reasonable people are perfect. Shared interests, compatible temperaments, mutual respect. They got engaged in the summer of 1938. The wedding was planned for June 1940. Greta's mother had already ordered the wedding dress. White silk, simple cut. Her father had reserved the church. Everything was in place. Then came September 1939. Poland, war. Heinrich received his military call-up in March 1940. They moved the wedding up. May 18, 1940, 2 months early. "Just in case," said Greta's mother. But no one wanted to finish that sentence. The wedding never happened. On May 10th, 1940, Germany invaded France. Heinrich's regiment was immediately mobilized. He left Berlin on May 12th. Greta watched the train disappear from the platform at Anhalter Bahnhof. Her wedding dress hung in the closet at home. The flowers had already been ordered. "I'll be back by June," Heinrich had said. "We'll do it then." But June came and went. France surrendered. The war didn't end. Heinrich was transferred to occupation duty in Normandy, then to Poland. Then to Russia, the wedding became after the war, then maybe next year, then just silence. Greta wrote to him every week, long letters about her students, about books she was reading, about the weather, carefully neutral, never mentioning fear, never asking when. His letters came every 2 or 3 weeks, shorter, careful, as if writing to someone he used to know. By 1942, something had changed in his tone. Greta felt it, but couldn't name it. Just a distance that wasn't geography. She told herself it was the war, that men returned different, that she just needed to wait. She was good at waiting. Sophie Kessler was 24 years old when Heinrich was brought to the Dresden Field Hospital. November 1942, frostbite from the Russian winter. His left hand was black up to the wrist. She was the nurse who saved him. For 3 weeks, she changed his bandages twice a day, applied ointment that smelled of turpentine and hope, talked to him as he gritted his teeth against the pain. "Tell me something," she said one afternoon, "something not about the war." Heinrich thought for a long time. "I used to teach medieval history. Past tense, the university's gone, because of the British bombers, March 1941. Sophie cleaned the dead tissue from his fingers. He didn't flinch. "What will you do? After? After what? After the war?" He laughed. It was a bitter sound. "You think there'll be an after? There has to be." "Why?" "Because otherwise, all of this is meaningless." He looked at her, really looked at her, not at a nurse, at a woman who believed in the future. "What about you?" he asked. "What will you do?" "I'll open a bookshop, live somewhere small, maybe by a lake. A bookshop. I love the smell of books. They smell like possibility." Heinrich smiled. It was the first real smile she'd seen from him. That's a good reason. By December, his hand was healing. He should have been transferred back to his unit. But Sophie falsified his medical reports, wrote that the infection was continuing, that he needed 2 more weeks. Then 2 more weeks. She knew what she was doing was wrong. She knew she was keeping him away from the front. She knew that other men were dying while Heinrich Bauer read Schiller in a hospital bed. She didn't care. She was 24 years old. She had watched 300 men die in that hospital. Some screaming, some silently, but all too young. Just once, she wanted to save someone. January 15th, 1943. Heinrich was declared fit for duty. The night before he left, Sophie found him sitting in the empty canteen. 2 in the morning, reading by candlelight. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "No." She sat across from him. The candle cast shadows on his face, made him look older. Or maybe he was older. War did that. "Are you scared?" she asked. "Yes." "Of dying? Of forgetting?" "Forgetting what?" He looked at her. "That there are women who want to open bookshops. That there are futures worth surviving for." Sophie reached across the table, held his hand, the hand she had saved. "Then don't forget." He kissed her. Not carefully, not politely, like a man who had stopped caring about consequences. When they pulled apart, Sophie was crying. "I'm engaged," Heinrich said quietly. Sophie nodded. "I know. Her name is Greta. She's been waiting since 1938. I know. I should tell her. But you won't." He closed his eyes. "No. Because you love her." "Yes. And you love me." Silence. "Yes," he whispered. Heinrich returned to the front on January 16th, 1943, but everything had changed. He wrote to Greta every Sunday, carefully crafted letters that never mentioned Sophie. He talked about camaraderie, cold rations, and the endless steppes of Russia. He wrote to Sophie every Wednesday, letters he had to send secretly through field post, letters about futures, bookshops, and the smell of possibility. 2 women, 2 lives, both real, both impossible. March 3rd, 1943, Greta's letter arrived. "Heinrich, my mother wants to know if you can get leave this year. She's still hoping we can have the wedding, even if it's small, just family. I know the war has made everything uncertain, But I need to know if you still want this, if you still want us. Please be honest with me. Greta? He read it 5 times. Then he wrote back, Greta, of course I still want to marry you. Of course I want us. When I come home, we'll have that wedding. I promise. Always yours, Heinrich. He sealed the letter, sent it. Then he wrote to Sophie, Sophie, I can't stop thinking about January 15th. Your hands, the way you said my name. I know this is wrong. I know I'm a coward, but I can't give up either of you. Does that make me a monster? He didn't send it. He kept it in his jacket pocket. Read it when he couldn't sleep. May 20, 1943. Somewhere outside Kursk, Heinrich bought a diary from a dying soldier. Leather-bound, the first 50 pages were filled with someone else's handwriting. Heinrich tore them out, made a clean start. Page 1, May 20, 1943. I'm in love with 2 women. I'm writing this not as a confession, but as a record. If I die, and I probably will, maybe someone will find this and understand, or judge me. I'm not sure which I want. Greta is the woman I should love. She's good, stable. She's waited for me with a patience I don't deserve. When I think of her, I think of Sunday mornings, books, and the future I promised her. Sophie is the woman I can't stop loving. She saved my life. Not just my hand, my life. When I'm with her, I forget the war. When I think of her, I think of possibilities. I'm lying to both of them. I love both of them. God help me. The diary became his ritual. He wrote every night. Not about events, not about battles, just the truth. June 14th, 1943. Today, I got a letter from Greta. She sent a photo in the garden, smiling. She looks younger than I remember. Now I carry 2 photos, Greta and Sophie. I keep them on opposite sides of my wallet so they don't touch each other. Is this better or worse? August 1943. I wrote to Sophie. I told her I imagined her bookshop. Shelves full of novels no one has burned yet. Mornings when no one dies. She wrote back. She said she imagines my hands turning pages instead of holding a rifle. I didn't tell her I also imagined Greta, the wedding we never had, the children we'll never raise. November 18, 1943. Winter is coming. We're retreating. Everyone knows, but no one says it. I think about dying more now. I'm not scared, just practical. If I die, what happens to them? Will they both grieve? Will they both move on? Will they learn about each other's existence? Would that be more cruel than this lie? January 1944. Heinrich got 2 weeks leave. It was the first in almost 2 years. He had to make a choice, Berlin or Dresden, Greta or Sophie. He chose Berlin. January 10th, 1944. Greta met him at the station. She was thinner. Everyone was thinner, but her eyes were the same. She ran to him, caught him, held him like he was the only real thing in a world of ghosts. You came back, she whispered. I promised. They spent 2 weeks pretending the war didn't exist. They went to concerts in bombed-out halls. They walked in the Tiergarten. They talked about the wedding they'd have after. On the last night, Greta asked the question she'd been avoiding. Do you still love me? Heinrich looked at her. She deserved the truth, but the truth would destroy her. Yes, he said. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. He didn't write to Sophie for 2 weeks. When he returned to the front, 17 letters were waiting for him, all from Sophie, each more desperate than the last. The last one was dated January 23rd. Heinrich, I don't know if you're alive. I don't know if you've forgotten me. I don't know if I was just a moment for you. But you were everything to me. If you're gone, I understand. If you chose her, I understand that too. Just tell me, please. Sophie, he wrote back immediately. Sophie, I'm alive. I haven't forgotten. You were never just a moment. I had leave. I went to Berlin. I saw Greta. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I'm still here. I still think about bookshops. The diary, February 1944. I'm a coward. I had the chance to end this. The chance to tell Greta the truth. to make a choice, but I didn't, because making a choice means losing one of them, and I don't have the courage to lose either. So I keep lying, keep writing letters, keep trying to prove it's possible to love two people without destroying both of them. By March 1945, Germany was collapsing. Heinrich's regiment was retreating through Poland. Soviet forces were 30 kilometers behind them. American forces 50 kilometers ahead. Men were deserting. Officers were committing suicide. The war was ending, but badly. March 28, 1945. Today, we passed through a village, completely empty, just abandoned houses and dead animals. In one of the houses, I found a mirror. I looked at myself for the first time in months. I didn't recognize the man looking back. I'm writing to both of them. Greta thinks I'm coming home to marry her. Sophie thinks I'm coming home to build a life with her. Both are waiting. Both will be destroyed. April 5, 1945. Final entry. We're surrounded. Soviet artillery. No way out. I've been carrying this diary for 2 years. Writing the truth, I couldn't say. If someone finds this, if Greta finds it, if Sophie finds it, I want them to know I loved them both. Completely. Impossibly, that doesn't make it right. But it was real. I'm sorry for the lies. I'm sorry for the pain. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to choose. If there's a God, maybe he'll forgive me. If there's a hell, maybe I deserve it. But I loved them, both of them, until the end. April 7, 1945. WWII in the afternoon. Shrapnel from a Soviet artillery barrage had hit him, and Heinrich was evacuated to Dresden. Infection set in. He died at 5 p.m. Sophie found the diary in his jacket pocket. Sophie stood in the empty hospital corridor, holding the diary. She hadn't opened it yet. She had promised to wait until he was gone. And now he was gone. But something stopped her. An instinct, a fear. There was truth in that diary, but maybe the truth was something she couldn't survive. She pressed the diary to her chest. Her hands were shaking. I'm in love with 2 women. He had said that. 2 women. Sophie had always known there was someone else. But knowing and understanding were different things. She opened the diary. She began to read, and as she read, 400 kilometers away in Berlin, another woman was receiving a telegram. We regret to inform you, Heinrich Bauer, killed in action. April 7, 1945. Greta read it 3 times. Then she collapsed to the floor. The war had taken everything, but it had saved one thing. It had kept her from learning the truth. Or so she thought. Sophie sat on the floor of the supply closet, the only private space in the hospital. A single candle, the open diary in her lap. She had been reading for 3 hours. Page 47. June 1943. Greta writes about planning our future, where we'll live, how many children. She's already chosen names. I write back and agree to everything. But when I close my eyes, I see Sophie's face. Sophie's hands grip the pages tightly. Page 89, October 1943. Sophie sent me a pressed flower from her mother's garden. She said it reminded her of me, stubborn, refusing to die even in winter. I keep it in my helmet. Next to Greta's photo, the pressed flower fell from between the pages. Brown now, fragile. Sophie picked it up. The flower next to Greta's photo. She continued reading. Page 134. January 1944. I spent 2 weeks with Greta. Every moment felt like a lie. She held my hand and talked about the wedding, about growing old together. I said yes to everything, but my chest ached the whole time. Not from wounds, from guilt. Sophie's vision blurred. Page 198, August 1944. Today, I got letters from both of them. In the same mail call, Greta, I bought fabric for curtains for our home. After, Sophie, I found a building for the bookshop. Small, perfect. They're both planning futures that include me. I'm not planning anything, just trying to stay alive long enough to hurt them both. The candle burned lower. Page 256. The final entry, April 5, 1945. If someone finds this, I want them to understand. I didn't plan to love two women. It happened. Like gravity. Like drowning. Greta was home. Safety. The life I was supposed to have. Sophie was breath. Hope. The life I wanted. I couldn't choose. So I chose both. And destroyed both. Sophie, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. You saved more than my hand. You saved the part of me that wanted to live. But I was never completely yours. Greta, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. You waited with a loyalty I never deserved. But I was never completely yours either. I loved you both. That's the only truth I have. Sophie closed the diary. Her face was soaked with tears. She hadn't even noticed she was crying. The candle went out. She sat in the darkness, pressing the diary to her chest. Inside were 2 years of Heinrich's thoughts. 2 years of loving two women. 2 years of lies. And photographs. She opened the diary again, struck a match. There, tucked inside the back cover, 2 photographs. The first, a woman with auburn hair and grey eyes, standing in a garden, smiling, beautiful, traditional, safe. Written on the back, Greta, Berlin, 1943. The second, Sophie herself, taken by a patient with a camera, laughing at something outside the frame. Her nurse's uniform wrinkled but white, her hair falling out of its pins. Written on the back, Sophie, Dresden, 1943. He had carried both. Always, Sophie looked at Greta's photograph. This was the woman Heinrich had been engaged to since 1938. The woman who had waited 7 years. The woman who was planning her wedding, while Sophie kissed him in an empty canteen. This woman had no idea Sophie existed. But Sophie knew everything. Sophie didn't sleep that night. She sat in the closet until the morning shift change. Then she left the hospital. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. She just walked. Dresden was ruins. The February bombing had destroyed 90% of the city. But the train station was still operating. Barely. Sophie stood at the ticket window. Berlin, she said. The clerk looked up. Berlin? Nothing's running regularly. The tracks are damaged. Could take 2 days. Could take 5. I'll wait. She bought the ticket with money she'd been saving for the bookshop, for the future Heinrich had written about. Now she was going to use it to destroy another woman's future, or maybe save it. She wasn't sure. The train to Berlin left at 3 p.m. the next day. Sophie sat in a car full of refugees, wounded soldiers, and silence. Everyone was running from something, or running towards something they'd already lost. She read the diary again, from beginning to end. Slower this time, understanding, looking for something, an answer, a justification, a reason to forgive him. She couldn't find one. Page 167, March 1944. I imagine telling them the truth. I picture their faces. Greta would cry silently. Then she'd ask me to leave. She's strong that way, controlled. Sophie would throw something. Then she'd forgive me. She's reckless that way, impulsive. But I don't tell either of them, because I'm weaker than both. He was right about one thing. Sophie wanted to throw the diary, tear out every page, burn it, erase 2 years of careful confessions, but she didn't. She held it carefully, like something fragile, because it was all she had left of him, and because Greta deserved to read it too. The train arrived at Lehrter Bahnhof on the 3rd day. Berlin was worse than Dresden. Soviet artillery was hitting the eastern districts, American bombers the west. The city was being torn apart from both sides. Sophie had one piece of information. Heinrich's letters had always been sent to the same return address. Margaret Richter Kantstraße, 45, Charlottenburg. Berlin, she asked for directions. A Soviet deserter pointed north. If it's still standing, it was standing, barely. Kantstraße 45 was a 4-story apartment building, soot-stained but solid. The windows on the 3rd floor were covered with blackout curtains. Sophie stood across the street. She had walked 300 kilometers to get here, waited 3 days on a broken train, read 2 years of Heinrich's secrets, and now she couldn't move. What would she say? Hello, I'm Sophie. I was sleeping with your fiancé. Here's his diary. He loved us both. Surprise. Her hands were shaking. Then the door opened. A woman came out, auburn hair pulled back, gray coat, thin, like everyone, but composed. Greta, Sophie recognized her from the photograph. In person, she looked older, tired, like someone who had been waiting too long. Greta walked down the street without looking back. Sophie followed. They walked for 15 minutes, through rubble-covered streets, past burned buildings, women sorting through debris, and children who had forgotten what peace was like. Greta stopped at a church, St. Hedwig's Cathedral. The dome was partially collapsed, but the entrance still opened. She went inside. Sophie waited 5 minutes, then followed. The church was empty, except for Greta. She sat in the front row, looking at the altar, not praying, just looking. Sophie slid in beside her. Greta looked over. No recognition, no suspicion, just weariness. "Are you here for someone?" Greta asked quietly. Sophie's throat tightened. "Yes." "The war?" "Yes." Greta nodded. "Me too. My fiancé, Heinrich." The name hung between them. Sophie's hands clutched the diary in her coat pocket. She should say something, explain herself, but the words wouldn't come. "How long were you together?" Sophie asked. 7 years. We've been engaged since 1938. We were supposed to marry in 1940. But you didn't. The war came first. Greta's voice was flat, empty. It always does. Sophie felt something crack in her chest. This woman had waited 7 years. Sophie had known Heinrich for 3. Who had more right to grieve? "I'm sorry," Sophie whispered. "Everyone's sorry. It doesn't bring them back." They sat in silence. The broken dome let in afternoon light. Dust particles drifted like ash. Finally, Greta spoke again. "He wrote to me every week. For 5 years. Every week. Even when the postal system collapsed. Even when he was wounded." Sophie's chest tightened. "His last letter came 3 days ago. Before the telegram. He said he'd be home soon. That we'd finally have the wedding." Greta pulled an envelope from her pocket. Worn, creased. "He said he loved me. He always said he loved me." Sophie couldn't breathe. "I read it every night." Greta continued. She stopped, looked at Sophie. "I'm sorry. You don't need to hear this." "No," Sophie said quietly. "I do." They left the church as sunset painted the rubble golden. Greta walked Sophie back toward the train station. They didn't talk much. Just 2 women who had lost someone. That was enough. At the station entrance, Sophie stopped. "I need to tell you something." Greta turned. "What?" Sophie pulled the diary from her coat. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped it. "What's that?" Greta asked. "Heinrich's diary." Greta's face went white. "Where did you get it?" "He gave it to me before he died." "Did you know him?" Greta's voice rose. "Did you know Heinrich?" "Yes." "How? Were you in his regiment? Were you a medic?" "I was his nurse. In Dresden, in 1942. Greta stared at her, trying to understand. Then understanding began to spread across her face. "You're Sophie." The name landed like a gunshot. Sophie's voice broke. "Did he tell you about me?" "No." Greta's face was hard. "But he wrote your name. Once, in a letter. He said you saved his hand. He thanked you. That was all." "That wasn't all." Greta took a step back. "What are you saying?" Sophie held out the diary. "Read it." "No." "You have to." I said no. Greta's voice was shaking. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but Heinrich is dead. Whatever this is." "He loved me," Sophie said. The words came out like a confession, like a wound. "For 3 years. While he was writing to you. While you were waiting. He loved me." The street was quiet. Somewhere in the distance, there was artillery fire, but here nothing mattered as much as this conversation. Just 2 women and a truth about to destroy one of them. Maybe both. "You're lying," Greta whispered. Sophie opened the diary, found a page at random. "Read aloud. November 1943. Sophie makes me believe in the future again. When I'm with her, the war doesn't exist. Just possibility. Just her hands in mine. Just breath. Greta's face paled. Sophie turned pages. Read again. January 1944. I spent 2 weeks with Greta. Every moment felt like betrayal. Not to her, to Sophie, but also to Sophie, to Greta. I'm betraying both of them by loving both of them. Greta leaned against the station wall. Stop. Sophie kept reading. April 1945. If I survive this war, I don't know who I'll return to. I don't know which one deserves me less. They both deserve better. Stop. Greta's voice was barely a whisper. Please stop. Sophie closed the diary. There are 256 pages, 2 years of records, all about us, about both of us. Greta slid down the wall to the ground. Her carefully composed face was collapsing. He was supposed to marry me, she whispered. We had a date, June 1940, then June 1941, then after the war, he promised. I know. He wrote to me every week. He said he loved me. He said, her voice broke completely. He said I was the only thing keeping him alive. He told me the same thing. Greta looked up. Her gray eyes were red. How long? 3 years. Since November 1942. 3 years. Greta's laugh was bitter, broken. I waited 7 years. You got 3. And he loved you? Yes. Did he touch you? Sophie's silence was answer enough. Greta closed her eyes. Tears ran down her face. I waited. I turned down 3 marriage proposals. I lost my teaching position because the school board said I was foolish for waiting. My mother stopped speaking to me. And she couldn't finish. Sophie knelt beside her. I didn't know about you at first. When I found out, I told him to tell you. He said he would. But he never did. Because he was a coward. Yes. They sat there, 2 women on the ground outside a train station. Their lives in ruins. The city was burning around them. The war was ending. The truth had finally been told. Do you have proof? Greta asked quietly. Letters? Photographs? Sophie pulled out the photograph. Hers. Handed it to Greta. Greta looked at it. Turned it over. Read the back. Sophie, Dresden, 1943. He carried this, Sophie said, in his wallet, next to yours. Greta's hands started to shake. I want to read the diary. Are you sure? I waited 7 years for a man who loved someone else. I need to know why. Sophie gave her the diary. They found a cafe that was partially intact. No electricity, no food, just empty tables and broken windows. They sat by candlelight. Greta opened the diary, started from the beginning. Sophie sat across from her, silent, watching Greta's face as she read 2 years of Heinrich's double life. Page 23, June 1943. Today I wrote to Greta. I told her I imagined our wedding, the house we'd build, the children. It's not a lie. I do imagine it, but I also imagine Sophie's bookshop, waking up next to her, a different life. Both dreams are real. Both are impossible. Greta's jaw clenched. Page 67, September 1943. Greta sent me a package. Socks she knitted. A book. A photo of herself. Sophie sent me pressed flowers. A letter that made me laugh for the first time in months. I wrote thank you letters to both of them. I meant both of them. Greta kept reading, page by page. Her face turned to stone. Page 112, December 1943. If I could split myself in 2, I would give each of them a whole man instead of half. But I can't, so I keep writing, keep lying, keep loving. 2 hours passed. Greta reached the final entry. April 5, 1945. I loved them both. That's the only truth I have. She closed the diary, put it carefully on the table. Her hands were shaking. He loved you, she said. Her voice was empty. Really loved you? Yes. Not just an affair. Not just wartime desperation. No. Greta's face crumbled. I thought I was enough. For 7 years, I thought if I just waited, if I was patient and loyal and good, he'd come home and we'd... She couldn't finish. Just sobbed. Deep, tearing sounds. 7 years of waiting collapsing into grief. Sophie wanted to comfort her, but what could she say? I'm sorry I loved him too. I'm sorry he chose both of us. After a long time, Greta spoke again. Did he make you happy? The question surprised Sophie. What? When you were together, did he treat you well? Yes. Greta nodded, wiped her face. Good. That's something. Why does that matter? Because if he made you unhappy too, then it was all meaningless. Greta's voice was tired, ancient. At least this way, someone got something good. Sophie's own tears started. I'm sorry. For what? For loving him. For taking him from you. Greta laughed. It was a broken sound. You didn't take him. He was never mine enough to lose. They spent the night in the cafe. Neither dared go home. Going home meant accepting that Heinrich was gone, that the futures they'd both imagined were dead. At dawn, Greta spoke. I'm going to write him a letter. Sophie looked up. He's dead. I know, but I need to say goodbye. The real goodbye, not the goodbye I thought was mine alone. She pulled paper from her bag. A pen, started writing. Heinrich, I read your diary, all of it. Every page, every entry about her, about me, about your impossible love. I want to hate you. I should. You lied to me for 3 years. You let me wait while you built a life with someone else. But I can't hate you because I read what you wrote. I saw the guilt, the pain, how loving both of us killed you. You were a coward. You should have chosen. You should have told me. But you were also human, and the war destroyed so many things. Maybe it destroyed your ability to choose. I waited 7 years for you. Sophie loved you for 3. Neither of us got enough time. Neither of us got all of you. Maybe that's the real tragedy. Not that you died, but that you never really lived. Always divided, always torn. I hope wherever you are, you're whole now. I hope you're at peace. Goodbye, Heinrich. Greta, she folded the letter, put it inside the diary, closed it. What will you do with it? Sophie asked. Keep it, as a reminder. Of what? That love isn't always enough. That loyalty isn't always rewarded. That waiting doesn't guarantee anything. Greta stood, straightened her coat. What about you? What will you do? Sophie thought about the bookshop, the building she'd found, the futures that no longer existed. I don't know, she said honestly. Will you stay in Dresden? No. Too many memories. Then where? Sophie looked at the diary, at 2 years of Heinrich's divided heart. Somewhere new, somewhere he never wrote about, somewhere that's just mine. Greta nodded. That's wise. They left the cafe together. The sun was rising over Berlin's ruins. Somewhere in the distance, the artillery had stopped. The war was ending. Finally, they stopped at a street corner. I don't forgive you, Greta said quietly. I don't know if I ever will. I understand. But I don't hate you either. That's more than I deserve. Greta looked at her. Really looked at her. He had good taste. You're nothing like me, but I can see why he loved you. Sophie's throat tightened. You two. They stood there. 2 women who loved the same man. 2 women betrayed by him, who both lost him before they ever really had him. Goodbye, Sophie. Goodbye, Greta. They walked in opposite directions. Neither looked back. Margarete Richter never married. She returned to teaching in 1947, taught literature to children who had grown up in ruins, to those who had forgotten what peace was like. She kept Heinrich's diary in a locked drawer. Read it once a year. On April 7th, the anniversary of his death, in 1952, she received a package, no return address. Inside, a book. The Bookshop by Penelope Fitzgerald. A note tucked inside the front cover. He would have loved this. Greta cried as she read it, then placed it on her shelf between Goethe and Schiller. She died in 1981, age 69. The diary was found among her belongings. Her niece tried to read it, stopped after 10 pages, burned it in the garden. Some truths are too heavy to inherit. Sophie Kessler moved to Munich in 1946. She opened a bookshop in 1948, small, by a lake, exactly as she described to Heinrich. She never married, never talked about the war, never mentioned Heinrich, but every April 7th, she closed the shop, lit a candle, read poetry until midnight. In 1952, she sent Greta a book, an apology, an acknowledgement, a shared grief. She never knew if Greta received it. Sophie died in 1989, age 71. The bookshop was sold to a young couple. They found a photograph tucked behind a loose floorboard. A man in Wehrmacht uniform, smiling, glasses slightly crooked. Written on the back, Heinrich, 1943. They framed it, hung it above the register. A ghost watching over the books. The diary itself was burned in 1981, but before it was destroyed, Greta's niece copied one entry. The last one, April 5, 1945. She kept the copy, showed it to her granddaughter in 2003, who showed it to a historian, who published it in a collection of wartime letters. The entry is now in the German War Museum, behind glass, anonymous. Visitors read it and debate. Was Heinrich a coward? A romantic? A man destroyed by impossible circumstances? The placard doesn't judge, just provides context. Written by an unknown Wehrmacht soldier. Found in Dresden, 1945. This diary documented his love for two women throughout the war. Both women survived. The soldier did not. No one knows what Heinrich would have chosen. If he had survived, if the war had ended differently, if he'd been forced to decide, maybe he would have chosen Greta for safety and the promise he made in 1938. Maybe he would have chosen Sophie for hope and the future that made him feel possible. Maybe he wouldn't have chosen either, would have disappeared, unable to face the truth with either woman. The diary offers no answers, just 256 pages of a man divided in two, who loved two women, who destroyed both, who was destroyed by both. Some people read it and see tragedy. Some see selfishness. Some see the cost of war, not just in bodies, but in hearts too broken to choose. But one thing is certain, Heinrich Bauer loved two women, completely, impossibly, until the day he died. And both women carried that love and that betrayal for the rest of their lives. Not as enemies, not as rivals, but as two people who understood the same loss, the same lie, the same man who was too afraid to choose and too human to let go. In the end, maybe that's what the diary really documents. Not love, not betrayal, the impossibility of being whole when war has already torn you apart. Yes, lives built on a huge lie. The only thing I learned from this story is how some lives are consumed, how some hopes are destroyed because of cowardly people, because of people who don't know themselves. It was a wonderful story where I learned how important it is to make choices in life and that loyalty must be built on one person alone. I hope life doesn't force us into this. In future stories, I will bring you wonderful content where you will watch many hope victims like Sophie and Greta, many false lives and many destructions. I love you all very much. Take care.